Hello, everyone. Welcome to Broken English Club podcast.
So it's 3:00 a.m.
Oh, the worst time.
Right.
Yeah.
You are just utterly exhausted. You're deeply frustrated and you're staring at a screen or maybe a canvas or, a business plan that simply isn't working.
Like the whole architecture of whatever you're trying to build is just completely broken.
Exactly. Your eyes are burning, the weight of the world is sitting directly on your chest, and
And every single instinct in your body is just screaming at you to throw in the towel.
yes, to just completely give up. And we are dissecting that exact moment today, that overwhelming urge to quit.
It's such a universal
It
feeling.
really is. So our mission for this deep dive is to take that agonizing feeling, deconstruct its mechanics, and fundamentally rewire how we process resilience.
Which brings us to the source material we're looking at today. It's an excerpt from a show called The Resilience Daily.
The piece is titled The Persistence Protocol: Why Quitting is the Only Failure.
Right. And the core thesis we're going to explore is that failure is, it's fundamentally misunderstood. It isn't the opposite of success.
No, it's a structural component of it.
Exactly. It's a necessary component.
Mm-hmm.
By breaking down the psychology of what actually happens when we want to walk away, we can completely alter how you approach your most intimidating goals.
I love that. So to understand what's happening in your brain at 3:00 a.m., we have to look at the friction between what a setback actually is and what we've been conditioned to think it is.
From childhood, really.
Yeah, exactly. We're taught to view failure as this glaring red mark on a report card.
Or a crushing rejection letter.
Right, or projects that just completely crash and burn. We take that environmental result and we immediately convert it into an identity crisis.
And what's fascinating here is how the source contrasts that conditioned fear with the actual definition of failure.
Because that conversion into an identity crisis, that's where the suffering lives.
It really is. The protocol argues that we need to strip away that heavy emotional baggage and reclassify failure simply as data.
Just raw information.
Exactly. It's merely a signal communicating, hey, this path didn't work, so try a different angle.
But human beings are, frankly, terrible at remaining objective when we put effort into something.
We really are. We interpret that lack of an immediate reward as a permanent character flaw. But the text makes a crucial distinction here.
Right, between a wrong turn and a true failure.
Yes, a wrong turn is not a failure. True failure is defined strictly as taking your foot off the gas and deciding the road is no longer worth traveling.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy, because the conceptual shift from final verdict to data requires a lot of cognitive override.
It's not easy to do in the moment.
No, it's not. So think about the GPS in your car, right? You're driving on a road trip, you lose focus for a second, and you take the wrong exit.
Happens all the time.
And the GPS immediately chimes in with recalculating.
Right.
When that happens, you don't pull the car over, turn off the engine, throw your keys into the woods, and, declare the entire road trip a miserable disaster.
No, you just took a wrong turn. You haven't failed the road trip.
Exactly. The only way to fail the road trip is to pull over and refuse to keep driving. If you're still moving, even in the wrong direction temporarily, you are simply gathering data for the recalculation.
That GPS analogy is perfect because it highlights the absurdity of our usual reaction to professional roadblocks.
Right. Why do we treat our careers so differently?
Because the GPS is entirely neutral. It doesn't judge our character. It doesn't tell us, that we're terrible drivers who are fundamentally unworthy of reaching our destination.
But when we experience a setback in real life, we lack that neutral perspective.
Exactly. We synthesize the error signal with our ego.
Which brings up a really crucial dynamic. If a setback is technically just a neutral data point telling us to recalculate, why does it feel so heavy?
Why does it trigger that profound exhaustion that makes us want to turn off the engine entirely?
Right. The source argues that the root cause of this devastating feeling isn't a lack of capability.
No, it's rarely about ability. When people give up, it's almost never because they intellectually lack the skills to figure the problem out.
They walk away because they lack the patience.
Yes. And we have to look at the culture we live in. We are steeped in an instant culture.
Hyper-optimized to destroy our patience.
Completely.
Right.
We expect immediate results. You post a photo and you get instant validation. You order food and track it arriving in 20 minutes.
And we apply that same timeline to massive life goals. We want the job promotion or the lean physique or viral success after just a few short weeks of effort.
And when those instant results don't materialize, We internalize the delay as proof that we just aren't cut out for it.
We tell ourselves the lie that we don't belong in the arena.
Which is why the text introduces this crucial linguistic shift, the concept of living in the yet.
Ah, right. The power of the word yet.
Exactly. You aren't failing because you didn't succeed. You only fail when you decide that the word yet no longer applies to your journey.
You haven't mastered the skill yet.
You haven't found the right market fit yet. The game only ends when you voluntarily remove that word from your vocabulary.
I understand the theoretical power of the word yet, but I want to push back on this a little bit.
Go for it.
We need to examine the reality of living inside that gap. Is the instant culture entirely to blame, or is living in the yet just deeply biologically expensive?
That's a really valid question.
Because saying, I haven't succeeded yet on day 3 feels optimistic. But saying it on day 300 when you were totally exhausted feels like delusion.
It really does.
So how does a person sustain that energy when the yet stretches on for months or years without any of those dopamine hits?
Well, that is the most dangerous trap in the entire process. Living in the yet is incredibly expensive from a neurological standpoint.
Right, because your brain is trying to manage its resources.
Exactly. Your brain is a prediction machine. It's constantly calculating the return on investment for your energy.
So it's basically a survival mechanism.
Yes. If you're on day 300 of a project with no tangible reward, your brain starts interpreting that as an existential threat to your energy reserves.
It floods you with the urge to quit to protect you.
Not because you're weak, but to stop you from wasting calories on a fruitless endeavor.
Wow. So the 3 a.m. urge to quit is essentially your brain trying to initiate an emergency shutdown sequence.
That's exactly what it is.
That changes the paradigm completely. Because if living in the yet is that exhausting and we're fighting millions of years of evolution, we need actionable ways to sustain our patience.
We can't just rely on a motivational quote to get through it. Willpower is finite.
Right. Which leads directly into the source's specific 3-part toolkit. These are engineered systems to trick the brain into keeping the engine running and avoiding the giving up trap.
Yes, the persistence toolkit. And the first tool is actively reframing the language of failure.
So instead of saying, I failed, you have to actively change your language to, I learned what doesn't work.
It sounds deceptively simple, almost like a semantic trick, but it dramatically reduces the psychological burden of a setback.
How so? Like, mechanically, what does that shift do?
Well, it changes which part of your brain is processing the event. When you declare, I failed, you trigger the amygdala, you elevate stress hormones.
Because it's an identity threat, it drains your cognitive battery.
Exactly. But when you consciously shift to, I learned what doesn't work, you force the prefrontal cortex to take over. You become a scientist in a lab.
Right, and a scientist doesn't cry when a chemical reaction doesn't work out. They just write down the new data point.
Precisely. You detach your ego and you preserve the energy that would have been wasted on shame.
Okay, so that helps deal with the aftermath of a roadblock. But what about the daily grind? Which brings us to the second tool, focusing on the process, not the outcome.
Because staring only at the finish line makes the journey feel agonizingly long.
If you're writing a novel and your only definition of success is seeing it on a bookstore shelf, you're going to feel like a failure for 18 months straight.
Your brain is starved of dopamine that whole time. Every time you sit down, the gap feels insurmountable.
The solution the source offers is redefining what a win looks like, shrinking the horizon down to focus on small daily wins.
As the text says, if you put in the work today, you succeeded today.
You are artificially manufacturing those daily dopamine hits.
Exactly. You showed up, you executed the process, you won.
Yeah.
That sustains the patience we talked about earlier.
But even with daily wins, there will still be moments where the resistance just feels impenetrable.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to the third tool, and this is the final highly practical one for that exact 3.0 a.m. scenario, the one more rule.
Emergency protocol.
Right. When the urge to quit hits hard, you make a deal with yourself to do just one more thing.
It's a micro commitment.
The text gives specific examples. Write exactly one more paragraph, send one more email, or, do just one more set at the gym.
It's the exact lever needed to break through that wall of resistance.
Okay, so what does this all mean practically? I have to question the one more rule a bit.
Sure.
Does writing one more paragraph actually move the needle on a 50-page report? Or is it purely a psychological trick to keep you from walking away from the table?
It is a psychological trick,
Right.
but it's a necessary one. It's about breaking resistance. The text confirms it's not about the physical output of that single email or paragraph.
It's about the physics of behavioral friction.
Yes, static friction. Getting a stalled car to start moving requires an enormous amount of energy. But once it's rolling, it's easier to keep it moving.
So committing to one more just gets the wheels rolling. You lower the activation energy so your brain doesn't trigger the shutdown sequence.
Exactly. And frequently, once you break that static friction and write one paragraph, the momentum returns and you write 5 more.
But even if you just write the one and go to sleep, you didn't quit. You stayed in the game.
You kept the car on the road.
Which brings our deep dive to a close. To summarize the ultimate lesson from the source, the people we idolize, the innovators, the artists, the leaders, they didn't reach the top because they were perfect.
No, they experienced the exact same 3.0 a.m. paralysis we do.
Right. They succeeded because they were the most resilient. They stayed in the game when everyone else walked away. You only truly lose when you walk away from the table.
That's the real definition of failure.
So if you are feeling like giving up right now, take a deep breath. As the text reminds us, you are closer than you think.
And I want to leave you with a final lingering question to ponder long after this deep dive ends.
Let's hear it.
If true failure is only walking away from the table, think back to a time in your past when you did quit something you cared about.
A business, a creative project, whatever it was.
Right. What if that wasn't a failure of your ability at all? What if it was just a moment where you temporarily ran out of one mores?
Ah.
And if you still have the ability, well, what would happen if you decided to sit back down at that old table today?